Hey everyone, Mitchell Venus here. How's it going? Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here on the channel once again, supporting our work. Thanks for the trust and for choosing us. Like I told you, we've got a pretty big project going on here for the start of the channel. So following the channel's niche, which is fashion and anatomy, we're gonna move on now to the character's costume design, okay? There's a lot to do here. Don't forget to like, comment, and share, please, all right? It really helps us out. If you want to give your opinion, go ahead. Criticism, anything, as long as it's respectful. We're in this together, all right? So without further ado, let's get started because there's a lot to cover. Thanks. We're gonna make the crown now, okay? Let's go. Well, so here is our character. Actually, it's not ours, it's another one, but it's similar. And I'm using Princess Diana here as an example. As I have previously mentioned before in our discussion, I think it was when I was working on the hair that I generally prefer not to strictly use male references for men and female references for women. But sometimes, as I said, I decide to make a specific exception to my rule. And this is also a clear case where I am making such an exception right now. Because I saw in the model, it's not even a crown, right? Diana's is a tiara. But I saw that it worked well as a crown structure, and that's why I'm using it. And actually, I'm using more of the idea and a bit of the structure rather than making it exactly like the tiara, right? So here I started, I took the tiara, trimmed it a bit, I made some adjustments here in Photoshop, and now I'm creating an ellipse here. I have these little crowns here with me, which are going to be part of our crown. It's simple, okay, folks? I made some little crowns that will make up a single crown. So you can see that I'm creating the structure of the crown here, the peaks of the crown. See how well this structure works for us to create the whole crown design? So I'm using this whole design for that since it's a front-facing crown, right? And it's something very detailed and it's from the front. So I always do half, just one part, duplicate it and mirror it to create the rest later, okay? Later, okay? So here, always using it as a reference, right? Trying to keep everything at the same height, the same measurement. And the wonders of Photoshop, as I usually say, this makes our work a lot easier. If this were, well, you can do it in pencil, you can also do it on paper, obviously, but here, you know, I have the freedom to do everything big in a way that I can really see it. It's better, right? Than everything separately. Then I start putting together the character's elements, and this here is just one more of those elements. And this one here also requires there's a lot of detail. If I had to make this same character on paper, I would make it really big, right? And then after that, I would carefully outline it. I would sketch in reality this intricate crown on a completely separate sheet, on a separate piece of physical paper, and then I would redraw it onto the character itself. That is exactly how I would do it if it were on paper. But since we are working here in Photoshop, I just do everything directly like this, with a separate layer, reference, and really big so I can see it properly, right? There's no secret here, guys. It's about having an idea, finding something similar, something that matches that idea, a reference that can help you execute it, and then you just do what needs to be done, okay? No need to stress, no big difficulty with this. I really enjoy doing this, folks. I really like creating things. For me, creating, making, modifying, making something new, making something different, trying to do something different, you know, that has always attracted me. So what I'm going to try to do here, I haven't seen this kind of crown anywhere else, but what I'm going to try to do here is a crown made up of several crowns, okay? So right here in front of you, you actually have a complete and whole item, which is right here. Creative, imaginative, really fertile process, you know, because there are a lot of details here. So you'll see me doing a lot of this, duplicating things, especially since these are geometric elements here, right, folks? So whatever we can duplicate, whatever we can copy, we do it, we just keep going. See? Always respecting the structure. Always erasing, always remodeling, because here I don't have a reference. You can see that I'm using a reference here. The reference is like this. I'm kind of taking the idea of the structure, but in a way, even the structure is going to end up different from this tiara, right? Because you can see that I'm placing the peaks in certain spots, but I need the structure of this tiara because besides being a real tiara, right? And I also need this real spacing so I can orient myself. Otherwise, I can't do it, okay? And now I'm going to work on the composition of the crowns. Honestly, folks, if I were doing this on paper, it would be a lot of work. It really would, because there's a lot of perspective, a lot of elements with a lot of perspective. You'll see that in the end, it's going to be very detailed. It's going to have a lot of detail. I don't even know if on paper I'd be able to do this with so much detail, you know? So Photoshop really helps a lot. So here I keep trying to arrange things more or less how I think they should be. Trying to give all this perspective to the base crowns. It's quite a bit of work, you know, folks. Okay? See? All these tools, these curves, these straight lines. If I had to do this by hand, it would be a lot of work. Not by hand, sorry. Yeah, by hand, like doing it freehand on paper. It would be really complicated. It would take a lot more work. And here we keep adjusting the perspective. Okay? Always. You see that every time I made the crowns, I put them all together, but even so, we still have to adjust them. And in the end, you'll see that it's also full of, it's kind of 3D, right? It has a certain volume in the jewels in all those details. And Photoshop helps a lot with that. Okay? So you will, here, it's all about patience, folks, all right? It's a matter of patience. There's no point in trying to rush because it won't work out. Art is patience. Be patient with what you want to do. You must be exceptionally and incredibly patient, always measuring the physical space between the individual crowns. See? I adjust the crowns, then I adjust the peaks again, and so on. Always readjusting and adjusting. It's a work of patience, okay? These little crowns I'm using here, and the ones I'll use more of, those other two chips as well, they're all made in the same way as this big crown is being made, okay? I take a reference, and from that reference, I make the drawing. The shape I want, and that's how I arrived at these 3 crown models. It has to be simple. Why? Because it's already a crown made up of several crowns. So it needs to have a certain simplicity. Otherwise, I could have even shown the process here, folks, but I believe it would have gotten too tedious, okay? So this is just to give you an idea of how it's being made. I think there's already plenty here for you to see. So all these little crowns, as I said, were made based on a reference. This little crown, for example, was actually made based on a real crown. I started with a basic geometric shape and gave it a contemporary aesthetic. I took that initial shape and gave it a very clean, strictly minimalist design, aligning with the style of the other pieces in this collection. As I said, they're going to have a 3D volume, and that will, how do you say it? That will give it a whole new look. It will really give it a very unique, very realistic feel, and it's going to look amazing. If I may say so myself, okay? Here we have another little crown. Very geometric, very simple, also made based on another crown from another layout. We're doing it little by little, you see, folks. I was making them, then I started adding lots of details, then I pared them down until I got to this model here. Really simple, honestly, okay? And this took a while. I don't even know how many days it took me to make this here. But it's a work of patience. There's no way around it. It's a long project, like I said, a lot of work, but I want to do this first project this way so you can understand the spirit of the channel. Later, other drawings will come, some much simpler, okay? A simpler painting, a simpler approach, because if we try to make every drawing and every illustration as detailed as this one here, man, we'll never finish, okay? And we need to keep the channel going, so I wanted to start with the most elaborate, the hardest one, and then we can move on to easier things, if I can put it that way, or more simplified ones, right? But here it's just so you can really understand the spirit of the channel, where we can go, right? How far we can push it. It's a very meticulous job. Okay, everyone? It really does take a long time to do. So actually, you really need to pay very close attention to every single little detail here, you see? Because as you make changes, you change the drawing, right? You distort it. So all the time, you have to make an adjustment. Fix it, you rework the object, but always with this, how do you say it? Always keeping in mind that you'll have to make some adjustments, because Photoshop's tools don't do everything. They distort, but there comes a point when it no longer has a sense of what's correct and what's not, okay? So we really have to do it this way. There's no other way. Always respecting the perspective. Doing things in perspective is hard work, you know? It takes some effort. That's why I wanted to make the crown from the front and in this pose much more symmetrical, so it wouldn't be so much work. Because you'll see, as I said, there are 3 illustrations, right? And this crown will be in 2 illustrations, but they'll be in the same position. We're going to use the same crown. And in both illustrations, so to make it easier, just imagine doing this from another angle in a different way. There's no way, it's too much work. So all of this is planning that you need to keep in mind. Also, your always measuring. Respecting the proportions, respecting the spacing. So I'm currently making these sharp peaks right here, but actually in the final version of the project, it won't have these peaks at all. But at the very least, it serves as a solid base for us to work from for composition, really, right? So we can center ourselves, so we can make the others, because I'm going to add other little crowns. On these peaks here, other very small crowns which will go here between these crowns. And so here we have to do it. I could have made a structure where I could have marked with straight lines and then added these peaks, but it's a matter of planning. Not even I really knew exactly what I wanted, what I was going to do exactly. So I kept coming up with ideas. I had something in mind, and then I kept working on it until I finally got to this very impressive finished product, you know? But it's a work of patience. There's no way around it. You see? That's another crown as well, which I made using a reference. That one is the easiest of all. But when you're making it, when you're creating, you don't know if it's going to end up full of details or not, or how it's going to turn out. So I decided to make all of them like this, really simple, really minimalist. It's as if they were little jewels that make up the crown. It is always exactly the same step-by-step process as we previously did with the other two crowns, right? First, you carefully make this entire row, then you give it that specific curve, and then we can finally move on to the next part. Look, almost there. And you do the same process, keep adjusting and readjusting. Sometimes the very tips of these little crowns end up looking slightly crooked too. You will definitely have to carefully fix those crooked parts at the very end of the procedure. We are certainly going to make sure that we do that much better. All right, because here we're still in the creation phase, right? And as I said, even during creation, you have to aim to make something that's well defined. It's a layout, it's a sketch, but it still needs to be well defined. At least here, I think it has to be. If you do all this, because we're going to retrace this crown here in a vector program, we're going to finish it in a vector program, then bring it back here to Photoshop to create a 3D texture on it, right? But when we go to retrace it, we need it to be as well put together, well composed, if I can put it that way, so there won't be any mistakes. Because doing this here, on the fly, doing this by chance is going to give you a lot of headaches, especially when it's an element that's very detailed, very geometric, folks. So it's good for us to keep things well planned, well defined, because when it comes time to clean up the drawing, to make the final decision, to finish it, we are going to have the absolute minimum amount of work with all these necessary fixes and future changes, okay? So always keep adjusting. Always keeping things very... Here, I fill it in so I can see better. I make the line a bit thicker. You can clearly see how this intricate crown structure really functions as a sophisticated design element, highlighting the craftsmanship that defines its unique aesthetic appeal and structural integrity within the piece. This intricate tiara structure really proved to be incredibly useful. It worked really well as a crown structure. Of course, if this were done in a real way, if it were made in 3D, it would look much better. But here, unfortunately, I don't have a real model of this crown for me to use, okay? For me to copy. And I would really like to have this specific model. Several small crowns forming a single one. And then you have to use your imagination. And it is precisely at this very specific moment that we truly see what the artist is actually made of. It is in the profound moment of artistic creation, the sacred moment of using your vast and limitless imagination. And that's when people will see what you're good at. Okay? So, and this is the part that's the most, this is really good in the process, the creative part. Having the possibility to do something, to have an idea that no one else has had, so to speak, that's really good. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because the fun of doing costume design, of creating a costume, I prefer coming up with ideas, getting inspired. I take references, but I try to do something different. You know what I mean? Unless the project, the job, or the client wants something copied, so to speak. Wants an exact copy. But here, in this case, we're creating things. And we're always conveying a message as well. Like I said before, in a video, I can't remember which one, clothing conveys a message. A message. All the elements convey a message. Here, nothing we do is by chance. Everything has a message, everything has a purpose. And clothing serves to convey that message. All the various symbols, the many signs, the signals, the types, and the ancient archetypes, all of that speaks. It's a work made with symbols, and it speaks through those symbols. Here's another reference. You can see that I'm using, look, a reference globe. I would never do it freehand. It would be very complicated, very difficult, very labor intensive. And this really speeds up the process, especially because we still have a lot to do. So I honestly don't care at all if people say, wow, you're copying. Guys, this right here, it's about speeding up the process, okay? No ego at all. I just keep doing things, copying, tracing, whatever I can trace, whatever I can do. That's how we do it. Especially since these are geometric shapes, right? And we need the guidance, we need these references. It really helps us a lot. Nobody does this without references, okay? You can see it has a lot of detail. And that's what it's for, folks. That's what it's for. Photoshop is here to speed things up, to help us out. All right? So there's our crown. That is very nicely done. Now it is an essential part of our character's unique costume. We thank Princess Diana for this opportunity. All right? And that's it. Another element of our character is done. Another part of the costume. You see, it's very detailed, quite tedious to make, but when you see the process, when you see the final result, man, you just say, that's it. And that's what's satisfying about our work, right? It's being able to use your imagination, being able to use your creativity. Nothing's more satisfying for an artist than being able to create, being able to. This is what's wonderful about art, folks. I appreciate you all watching. Like, comment, share. You help the channel a lot, and you help me too. Any questions, any suggestions, you can post them here respectfully in the videos, okay? I'll try to read as much as I can here. Help me build this channel. We're just starting out. So any kind of comment, once again, if it's respectful, is welcome. All right? Thanks, everyone. Let's keep going. There are more videos coming. Thanks. Bye-bye.